You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back into another DD Fantasy Football Mock Draft Show. We are going to rip a post-2025 NFL Combine mock draft just with our thoughts on the prospects, on our reactions from what happened in the Combine. We're going to go 4 rounds. Not going to base it on any mock draft. I know we've done the last few based on an actual mock. We're just going to draft this on our players, how we think things have changed. We could talk a little about what their hypothetical draft capital situations could be or landing spots could be. But we're going to do a 12-team, start 10, 2 quarterback with 2 PPR for tight ends and a 0.15 point per carry. We're going to go 4 rounds with the 4 individuals on the screen. In this order, we have Mitch Sorensen, Dino MC on X, one half of Dynasty Theory. We have Shane Manila at Shane Says FF on X, one half of Mannequin Chill. We have Brandon at Destination Devi or DD Fantasy. He is the one that is behind almost all of the social media and all of the tweets that you see from the DD handles. And then myself. We're going to go in this order. Mitch, we'll start with you. 30 seconds on how this format is approached by you, regardless of whether that's tight ends, quarterbacks, running backs. When you see this format, if I said you're joining this league, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
I have to draft some quarterbacks that I don't want to. In Superflex, I would not even worry about quarterback 5, 6, 7 in this draft, but in 2 quarterback, I'm definitely going to be paying attention to where these guys go.
Shane, how about you? 2 PPR for tight ends. Does that at all make you more likely to draft them in the mid rounds, or what's your take?
I'd like to pretend and think, and we'll see when we get there, how steadfast I am in this. But I think after this combine, there's a solid 5 that I'm going to stick with, and I'm not going to deviate beyond that until it's the 3rd round and there's a tight end on the board that's outside of that. And then I'll probably just end up picking one anyway, even though I don't want to.
Brandon, how important is it to know the market in a league like this, where you have all these different positional values that are probably not going to align exactly with what you're reading on X or what you're reading on, random or listening to on random podcasts that are just talking about players? Like, they probably aren't factoring in 2 QB scarcity or 2 PPR for tight ends. How important is understanding the market here?
It's very important, knowing your league economy, knowing your league mates. We talk about knowing your league mates, knowing what they value. If Mitch doesn't value these, QB6, QB7, QB8, he's probably not going to be the trade partner that I want to be, trying to align with. And you got to look at his roster and see, okay, does getting a QB1 in this draft, is getting Cam Ward, does that make sense for him? So it's very important.
Yeah, I think with the scarcity at quarterback, especially, like having a good pulse at what it takes to fill out your QB room and when it makes sense to take, like Mitch said, I mean, that was going to be my first point. Clearly inferior quarterbacks with risky draft capital, but you're like, man, if I want this guy, because we're not going to have every 4 picks, you're going to get 1 pick in a round, and it's like, do I really want to spend the 203 on a QB that went in the 3rd round, and I'm just praying that he starts so I can quote unquote flip him? And then to Brandon's point, what if the QB market doesn't reflect an actual 2 QB scarcity format? And it's like, wow, I drafted that guy at 203 with the goal to get a first, and I get laughed at. Even if he starts, I can't even get that. So what was the point of making the bet in the first place? So Mitch, you're up 101. Let's let it rip.
Hey, Ash Genty, number 1 overall. He is every single time. We'll move ahead.
Genty at 101. Shane, 102.
I am taking the running back that had a great combine, was the running back 2 heading into it, is really close to the running back 1 of this class. And I think he's made a lot of headway towards that. So, yeah, I'm going to take him, Marion Hampton, at 102.
Is that something that you're very sure of now after the combine? Like,
yeah,
you buy him, there's nobody else that can even challenge him at this point?
Absolutely no doubt. Again, if we get to the NFL draft and for some reason he falls to the 4th round and there's another 1st round running back besides Genty, don't care what I just said. That's out the window. But that's not going to happen. Not from what we've seen, not from what we've heard. People rave over him. Scouts rave over him and about him. And what he did at the combine that solidified that he's the running back too.
Brandon, you're up at 103. If you don't have quarterbacks, Would you have taken Hampton at
Yes.
102?
Yes, and I will run to the board and take Cam Ward here at 103 in a start 2 quarterback. It's very clear over all the news and all the hype that's been going on. There's a very clear tier 1 quarterback, and that's Cam Ward. So much that multiple teams are trying to trade up to the 101 in the NFL draft, probably for Cam Ward, because there is a clear tier gap there. So I will take advantage of taking that quarterback here at 103.
Man, that's the clear chalk top 3. Don't you guys think? Those 3 pretty much. And now you're at the spot where I could go with a quarterback. I think a lot of teams would see this 2 QB format. And I could tell you that if you have this pick and this was the situation, like this pick, you're not just going and trading it for Trevor Lawrence or Dak Prescott. Like the odds the other person accepts that trade, unless they just have an abundance of riches at QB, like this is where you start getting to that inflection point where the pick is going to be more valuable in your mind than what the market is going to say you can buy at quarterback. So I do think I would trade this pick for any of those dynasty QBs that I felt good about that was in the top 20 or higher. I'd be willing to move this pick if it was somebody that I felt good about, whether it's Purdy or Goff or whoever it is. There's 12 of them in there you could probably justify. But I have to make the pick here. There's a couple running backs I could take. There's a couple quarterbacks I could probably justify taking. There's a tight end I could take. I'm going to go with Tyler Warren in this format. Well, you know what? No, because I do think that there's a lot of steam with him going to the Colts, and I'm going to project that he's going to go to the Colts. So I'm going to backtrack, and I'm just going to go Quinshon Judkins in the point per carry. I'm just going to rip that he gets second-round capital. He has a name that people love. This format suits a guy that could handle a heavy workload, so I don't mind. There might be other running backs that people like better than him. This feels like a perfect format for him, and I do think he lands in one of those spots like a Denver or Minnesota or Pittsburgh where he gets a lot of volume early. So Quinshon Judkins definitely would not have taken him at RB3 before the combine, but post-combine, that's where I would slot him in. So, Mitch, you are up at 105.
Even if you were going to take Tyler Warren, I was just going to take the next tight end on the board who I like just as much. But since you didn't take Tyler Warren, lets me have the opportunity to take him at 105. I think in a lot of these 2-point premium tight end leagues, this is kind of how it's going to go. Like you're going to have the top 5 pretty close to this. Just love the guy. And I love Colson Leveland just as much. So like I said, if you would have switched it around, that's exactly who I would have went with. I would have went with a tight end in the spot no matter what.
Shane, I can't get the Colts landing spot that is literally almost every mock you read has Tyler Warren going to the Colts. And like, do I have a bias there I'm so down on that landing spot that if I think there's a chance, I don't want to take him, but I get it.
No, I think that's warranted considering these 2 players. It's probably going to be, I need a tiebreaker, right? And what's funny is I was going to say, and I'm kind of happy, I'm taking Colson Loveland because I actually like him more than Tyler Warren now, which I didn't see happening literally last week when I berated the DD community for drafting him above Tyler Warren. But again, things change all week. All you've heard about is how much teams like him and how much of more of a receiving weapon he probably will be. And then he measured in pretty much the same size as Tyler Warren, who I thought was a T-Rex from what I was told. And he still measured in as a monster, just not Godzilla. So I'm taking Loveland, again, playing to the format and the fact that the second quarterback is way up in question for me. It's way up in the air. I don't know who it is right now, so I don't think I'd want to risk it right here.
Brandon, you ripped Cam Ward at 103. Are you ripping another QB here?
Absolutely. It's super flex. It's start 2 QB. Like I'm starting. I got to start quarterbacks here. At the end of the day, Shadur Sanders is still a top 10 pick in the NFL. It's the last time I checked. I mean, it seems like he's definitely lost some steam, but here's the reality. There's the Titans, there's the Browns, there's the Giants, there's the Jets, there's the Raiders. That's 5 teams without even blinking. You got the Saints are probably lurking there at 9, and there's some mystery team lurking in the teens. I doubt he really gets some slippage here. At the end of the day, it's start 2 QB. Whether I like him as the prospect, the reality is he's going to be starting more than likely from day one or within the first month. And that has value. So I'm going to take Shedeur Sanders over probably the RB4 at this point, and even the wide receiver 1 in this format.
Man, I can't argue with your points. If you think he's going to get top 10 capital, that was the discourse after the combine, was that, you know, he might not be a top 10 pick, or he might be way further away from Cam Ward than people think. Man, I'm learning this mock, guys, because I think this spot here, sitting here thinking, do I go with the QB that I think is going to get the capital, or do I roll with the wide receiver 1? All right, I'm going to use Brandon's logic because I think Jackson Dart and Shedeur are going to be in the same tier. So we're going to go with Jackson Dart at 108. I think he gets top 15 capital, and in this format, you got to take the shot. All right, Dart goes at 108. We got Mitch back up at 109. I didn't think we would see 3 QBs off. I think the comments will crush us for that, but here we are. What you doing, Mitch?
That's fair. This is hard because if you're looking at league settings, what we always tell people to do, just make sure you're drafting according to league settings. The wide receiver 1 is still there, but there is a 0.15 point per carry in this league. And like James Conner smashes in these leagues. David Montgomery smashes in these leagues. So I'm going to go with my running back 3 with Travion Henderson. I thought he did more than fine at the combine, but in these point per carry leagues, I want all the running backs I could get because they're so hard to trade for.
Yeah, I can't argue. He's probably leapt Caleb Johnson after the combine. Shane, you agree with that?
Absolutely. And, you know, I've been a Caleb Johnson guy for, you know, I've been getting crushed in the comments for literal months now, that he was going to be slow. You know, I don't think he's slow, but he was obviously slower than a lot of the big dudes that were running this week. So he's definitely fallen back.
Well, you're up at 110. Did you get sniped? What are you doing here? Is it time to take a receiver?
Yeah, I mean, just based off of principle almost, I have to take Tet McMillan. Like, I can't let the wide receiver 1 of the class fall below 110. That just feels inconsiderate. Also, I still like Tet, although I am a little concerned that I was hoping that he was going to measure in at like 6'3" and 7/8, anything to be under 6'4", and he didn't. In the history of wide receivers over 6'4" is not great. I know everyone will be like, oh, but Megatron. Yeah, but Johnny Wilson. There's more Johnny Wilsons than there are Megatrons. I'll just say that. But I'm still going to go Tet. You know, I will say this. I feel like his stock has dropped a little bit over last week as, again, you listen to the chatter, as you listen to and see the tweets about, you know, Luther Burden might be closer to him than we think. But, yeah, I'm going to go Tet here because I still believe he will be the wide receiver 1 of this class.
Yeah, I just think the chatter of him being a potential like top 5 pick, you know, like he's just a slam dunk's got to be drafted in the top 10 as a receiver. That's probably gone. I mean, Ray even said it last night. The chat was saying on his combine recap, he was saying that, you know, Tet's not probably going to go in the top 10. He might, but like the thought that we can just pencil him into New England at 4 or a team's going to take him in the top 10 because he's clearly the best receiver. Not the case. So Brandon, you're up at 111. Where are you going?
I'm going to take Caleb Johnson here at 111. I think this is the pick where, you know, he's going to stop the slide. You know, yes, he had a 4.58 or 4.57 40. So yes, it was a tenth of a second slower, but it doesn't show on the tape. And at the end of the day, this is a point per carry, right? And he's going to probably be, you know, a day 2 pick who's going to get a lot of opportunity. And I think this is probably a really good spot. Like if you were going to tell me, Scott, 3 weeks ago, I'm going to get some people's RB2 at the 111, you know, you would be jumping for joy, and you're going to get that. There's a little bit, I think this is going to be the pick in the first round that gets shuffled around because of the combine. Like before we get to the NFL draft, if you're doing drafts before the NFL draft, this is going to be the guy that probably people are going to regret taking at 111. Or not regret, but like people regret waiting.
Letting him go there. And I'll say this, right? because I don't want people to misconstrue this. I don't know that it's necessarily that he has fallen more than other players just did really well at the combine, and it's hard to ignore that. It is just hard to ignore that. So it's not like, look, if I got Caleb Johnson at 111 in my drafts, I'd be ecstatic. So I don't think any of us are like, oh, I don't want Caleb Johnson on my team. It's just a few of these guys had really, really sublime combines.
It's the same tier, right? Like, I think all of us would all agree. It's the same tier guy. It's not like we're not saying that Caleb Johnson's instantly in a new tier. It's just he's at the end of the tier for running backs in that group. And so
yeah, he went from the RB2 or 3 for people to the RB5 now, and there's 4 that people would probably take ahead of him. And there's a bunch of guys that are now not in his tier, but the analysis is going to be, man, why do I have to spend the 111 on Caleb Johnson when I can get the RB12 at the 210? You know what I mean? At the 212, at the 301. Like, maybe in this format they get pushed up, but I think people feel a lot more comfortable leaving the combine with getting that 4th round running back RB12 than they would have, even though it was a good running back class. The combine really backed that up. I've played in a lot of formats like this. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, would you, we could maybe poll real fast. Would you take Bucky Irving or the 111 where you can get Caleb Johnson? Real quick.
I think I would take Bucky because I could do a lot with Bucky Irving.
And
the format leads to, I'm fine with Bucky's performance or production, because I think it's hard to say there's going to be 5 RBs in this class that just outproduce Bucky Irving.
I was going to say I'll take Bucky because I know for a fact you can trade him for way more than the 111 because I've moved him for the 106 and a third. And I know people that have done similar deals. So, yeah, Bucky. I'll take Bucky here, but only with the express written reason of moving his ass later.
Agree with Shane. Yep.
I was saying I played in a lot of formats like this where in point per carry leagues, you do not want to draft receivers that have almost no potential to be like elite. Like you don't necessarily want to collect a bunch of, just think of guys that are never going to be elite. Like you don't want to just collect a Devontae Smith type or a Jordan Addison type unless the market dictates that those guys are worth a lot because they're young receivers. But if they're just wide receiver 20 to 30, they just don't have a lot of steam in this specific format because the other 3 positions are valued so much higher. But that's clearly the best player on the board. I mean, the best next 3 skill players off the board. I mean, we're already down to probably 3rd round running backs. Hell, if there's how good do you feel about any quarterback getting drafted here, Mitch? Even if there's a 2nd round QB, do you feel good about that guy over Golden, Egbuka, or Burden, who are all probably going to go in the 1st, almost guaranteed? So I think these 3 are all in the same tier. Pick your flavor. A lot of people will have Golden ahead of Egbuka and Burden. Some people will have Egbuka ahead of Burden now. Like, I don't really care about the order. I see these 3 picks as being very much similar in value. I think a key with these picks is what can you trade them for? Can I trade one of these picks for like Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker, like a guy that's just going to be a hammer, even if it's only for 2 or 3 years? Like, give me that in a point per carry. So I'll go with Luther Burden. I think a lot of people still like him. He had a lot of steam as people's wide receiver 1, but begrudgingly, I'm making this pick. So, Mitch, you're up at 201. Do you kind of feel the same way?
I'm going Mason Taylor. For me, talked about on the live stream that we just had, but for me, he is the tight end that isn't with the top 2. But if you took those top 2 out, everyone would be in love with this guy. What he did on Friday night was extremely good, looked great in the gauntlet. Like, I liked him going into the combine, but just watching him on the field, the guy's legit. So in a big premium like this, give me the tight end, because if you're going to tell me who's going to have a better rookie season, Mason Taylor or Egbuka, I think in a league like this, Mason Taylor's probably going to end up scoring more points. So give me the tight end.
Are you assuming he goes, 2nd round?
Yeah, I'm thinking early 2nd round.
Okay, so if he goes in the 2nd round, I mean, if you think they're going to score similarly, then you are getting a little bit of an extra benefit by taking a shot that he could be the outlier tight end that becomes Mark Andrews. You know what I mean? Like if it's something like that, that's where the benefit comes in. It's not necessarily, oh, he's definitely going to outscore him. If he does, you've hit a tier higher than drafting a wide receiver 2. Like, that's the theory I would look at it behind drafting a tight end over those guys. Shane, 202. Would you get sniped on the Taylor pick? You're shaking your head.
No, it's just I thought that was ballsy. That's a lot of
agree.
nutsack juice. A lot of nutsack juice to do that there. But he did have an absolute monster combine after a really good Senior Bowl. So I understand it. And I'm just chattering here because I'm like, do I have the balls to go Arroyo here? Do I have the same amount of nutsack juice as Mitch? I don't know. It feels like I could go Golden, right? Had a great 4.29, 40. Probably a first round draft pick. What do we have? RB6 already?
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is choose your own adventure. And I don't know if any of them are going to have happy endings. Any choice I make feels like it's going to be the wrong one. You know what? Times like this, you just gotta trust your gut, man. You just do. Right. Like I don't have a strong conviction towards any of these players over one another, considering the format is 2-point tight end premium. I'm going to go ahead and take Arroyo. I think I take him. Did he come in? Did he come up? There he goes. Yeah. I took Arroyo. I think you'd be happy with this. This is kind of insane that we are now up to the tight end 5 of this class. Is that right?
We are.
Yeah. So, and part of that is I think the combine kind of set a cutoff line, right? There's like 5 tight ends we are really good with, and then there's a steep, I don't know how I feel about this dude after that. So that's why I'm taking Arroyo.
Brandon, we're starting to get to a point now where, and again, speaking to my experience in these types of leagues, somebody at the 204 or 205 is going to get a first round receiver just laying in their lap because of the format. And you know how many drafts I've looked back and I go, damn, that guy, this is like the Justin Jefferson fell 4 more picks because everyone had to take the positional scarcity ahead of him. And you're looking back going, man, if I know I could get a first round receiver in the second round, I'll just bank the points and worry about it later. But what are you doing here at the 203? Because it's starting to feel like, damn, I got pretty good value if I just was sitting on this 203.
Yeah. I'm gonna go at Mecca Buka. I'm just gonna trust that the first round capital, as much as I don't love it in a 12 by 10, right? Because remember, it's 12 by 10 and it's also lineup. So I have to think about like week in, week out. I have to put this guy in the lineup. I feel better about putting my 203 of Emeka Egbuka in the lineup every once in a while as I would if maybe I had to take him, like, because of the format. Let's just say Jackson Dart probably wasn't there in 108, and because of the tight end premium, maybe he's closer to the 112, 201. I don't feel nearly as bad. I think the upside of Egbuka is there still. Obviously, with the Commanders trade this evening, that's one less dance partner there at the end of the first round. But there's still going to be plenty of opportunities for him to get into the first round. Yeah, I feel good. I feel good taking the projected first round NFL draft capital as of right now with Egbuka, and I'm just gonna kind of roll there. Wide receiver 3. It's probably some people have him as wide receiver 2. Choose their fancy. I think this is the beginning of that tier, so I'm cool with it. I'll take Egbuka here, but I was considering running back. But
yeah, I mean, and I'm going to take Matthew Golden for the same reasons you laid out. I think he's definitely going in the first round. Some people already have him as their wide receiver 2, above Burden, above Egbuka now, even though he was never really there before. Solidified he was the best receiver at the combine. So I think he's clearly in that same tier with Burden, Egbuka, and himself. And you start looking back, Mitch, the team that got Cam Ward also got a first round receiver, and the team that got Quinshon Judkins also got a first round receiver. So you're starting to look at these draft classes stacked. If you truly just had the 103 and the 203 or the 204 and the 104, this is where the format benefits those teams picking early, right? Because they're like, damn, I can just clean up on the free value. Like there will be leagues, Mitch, where somebody takes Golden or Egbuka as high as the 104, 105. If there's no premiums, if there's no 2QB, if there's no point per carry, like those receivers are going in the mid first. And here you're getting them in the middle of the second. So it feels like putting that together, like you feel real good if you picked you were rebuilding a team and you had the 104 and the 204. You feel real good about that rake with getting those first two players.
Yeah, this is why if you could gamble on early seconds if looking into 2026, if you can make that gamble on, hey, I'm willing to give you this vet because I believe you're actually going to end up having an early 26 second, this is when it pays off. Even if you're a good team, let's say you have the 110, so you get Ted McMillan, but you traded for the 104 8 months ago, and all of a sudden you get Matthew Golden too. And that's how like elite teams stay elite. So while it's even helping out the early teams, if you could just stay ahead of this process, it helps you out a ton. And for me, I'm going to stay on the wide receiver train here because, Scott, you brought it up earlier. What you want in these wide receivers is you want a guy who could smash. And I think Alec Iomanner, he went out, ran that 4.44. I mean, he ran faster than I thought. His tape is amazing. That offense sucked, but he looked good. And we know he's been good for the last 3 years now. So for me, I just think his upside is extremely good. And if I could get that upside in a mid-second round wide receiver, I'm going to take it.
Interesting. That's not what I thought you would do, but I like it sounds like you have a little conviction. Where do you think the draft capital cutoff is for him? Does it got to be like top 50 or better before?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a second round guy. We say top 50, but let's just say he goes to say the Buccaneers move on from Godwin, right? He ends up going there. So he ends up being like a top 55 pick instead, right? As long as he goes in the second round, I'm more than happy with that.
So talk through that, because I don't think he's going in the first. I think we've hit the first round receivers.
Nope.
So when you get into the second, you start getting into would you rather chase the landing spot where people are going to go, ooh, that guy's going to be the wide receiver 1 or 2 right off the rip? Or are you more interested in a guy that goes to an established offense with a good quarterback that's fed multiple players before? Because we've made this mistake where we push up like the Jalen Polks, right? Because he just goes somewhere where there's nobody else.
Yep.
But then, he's not ready to be the best receiver on a team and he doesn't do anything. And then all of a sudden it's a wasted pick. So I think understanding kind of how you are going to spot certain landing spots with receivers past the first round is important, because it's not just guaranteed that they're going to be on the field day one. So
100%. I mean, that's why I was saying, I'm just not going to say top 50. I'm going to say the whole thing. Because what if he goes to the Rams? I mean, and then we're extremely happy about it. But if he goes to the Giants, who we don't even know who their quarterback's going to be at this point, then I'm like, well, they already have a number one. How's this going to go? Right. But I know Matthew Stafford can make 3 wide receivers be good in offense. So, dude, I 100% believe landing spot matters. Like, I will never get off that train. So if he ends up going to a really bad spot, I'll move off of him, and I'm completely okay doing that.
Yeah, I like that. Shane, 206, how you feeling about this pick? You got Colston Loveland. Where are you going?
I'd feel better if the NFL draft had already happened, and then I could know which running back is going to be the next running back to take. And I'm picking between 2 guys. One had a really, 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 really good combine, and the other didn't run a 40. But other than that, it was okay. Oh man, it's funny in the comments. No matter what you do, people are going to hate your draft, right? And that's fine. But it's not easy. It truly is not easy making these decisions, man. When I'm on the board in a real draft, this is how I feel. When I'm in like a spot like this where I have like 3 or 4 guys that I want to draft, I'm literally trying to trade in before I even make this pick. So it's just to kind of like, then it doesn't matter what choice I make. I just get a guy that I like, and then I'm going to get another guy that I like. I'm going to guess that, man, let me cheat a little bit, right? I'm going to go over here, NFL draft. They've got them not significantly lower. They do. I'm going to go DJ Giddens. Yeah, I'm going DJ Giddens. Okay. Dude had a very, very, very nice combine. I'm just looking at his his next generation draft score rankings, and he's right behind Caleb Johnson, who are both a little lower than, like Caleb's probably a little lower than people would think. And this is going to be a pick that come the NFL draft, I could completely decide I'm not going this way because the NFL draft could tell me I'm not going this way.
So it's funny. I want to kind of stop us real quick because I think this is a huge point to talk about with this format. Brandon, we finally hit that point where nobody really wanted to pick the RB6 because we've had Devin Neal there. We've had Ollie Gordon there. And now nobody probably has any conviction. Not that those guys are bad. It's just there's so many of them that, and I think all of us right now are thinking, well, Shane picked the RB6, so I'm ready just to go crazy with the RB7 through 20, the rest of this draft. But it does feel like in the format, you don't want to have to use high picks on whoever that is. And obviously we're going to have a better ability to tier these guys after the draft. But I think this really just highlighted how there is a blind spot in conviction with a lot of these players because we've assumed, do we agree that this RB6 in this draft class is probably coming off the board? What are the odds the RB6 is off the board in the second, Brandon? Or is it probably the third or later? NFL draft.
I mean, Genty, Hampton, Caleb, Judkins, Henderson, those are your five that are, do you feel good about those guys in the top 64?
And one of those guys could fall to the third.
One of those guys
possibly
could easily fall to the third. Like I think I was talking in the Discord this afternoon. Like somebody asked me what's the over under on draft running backs by day 2, and I think I said 4.5, right? Because I had these five guys, right? But if you said to me how many running backs go by round 3, like, I mean, we've heard as much speculation that could be as many as 12, but we all know that we've done enough drafts where it's probably more like 9, maybe. And honestly, once we get into the 7, 8, 9 guys, it's going to be one or two of those guys as dudes that we're like, really? He's a third rounder? Like we've done it every year. I feel like it's like, oh, that guy, like how many of us had like, Wandale Robinson round 2? Like these kinds of guys, like I know I'm shifting to wide receiver, but like just in general, like there's going to be a guy that we have pegged at like RB19, like probably Bashil Scootin' Tootin', right? Where he had a really good combine and all of a sudden he's now a round 3 pick. And it's like, wait a minute, how did he get to round 3? How did he get to RB7?
Yeah, I think historically it's around like 6 or 7 that go in the first 2 days. And I think on the live stream, we answered like 7, 8, like it was under 10. So you're talking if the first 5 we drafted are going to be top 5 locks, you might have 2 or 3 more that have draft capital slightly higher than the bulk of where all the rest of them are going to go. And we've been burned by enough round 3 running backs that like a round 4 running back can get a landing spot where I just flat out have them a round higher than the round 3 guy. So I think we're at the point where the landing spot matters more than anything. You can't just cite draft capital. So you're really just making bets on, okay, I like DJ Giddens, but I also think he's going to go between round 3 and round 5. And if he does, he's going to be entirely landing spot dependent. So it's just interesting that we had a big gap where nobody wanted to take an RB, but the actual board, I think you would have started to see people just ripping running backs right where that Iamaner pick was, like whoever the RB 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 based on landing spot, this is where they should go probably.
Yeah.
So what are you picking here, Brandon?
I'm actually going to stay in the running back. I'm going to stay in the running back lane, and I'm probably going to take a guy that hasn't been picked in this range at least, and it's Damian Martinez, running back out of Miami. He arguably had a really good 40 time. He was 4.51 at a dude that he slimmed down. He went from 240 to almost, I think he weighed in the combine. I think it was like 214 pounds. He produced at Oregon State as a freshman and sophomore, transferred down to Miami to be with Cam Ward and had another big season. Like he's the kind of bruising back that in a point per carry format, those are the kind of dudes that like, those are the James Conner type dudes, right? He's going to go like day 3, day 4, day 5. He might sit for a little bit early on, but he's going to be the guy that like all of a sudden he's, like Brian Robinson, where he's 13, 14, 15 carries for 75 yards and in a PPC format. Like those are the dudes you want in week 11 when you got 14 buys.
Yeah, I can't argue with it. I'm going to make this quick because I'm just going to go with the perfect guy for this format. This is the format I'm willing to push him up, probably a half a round. I'm going to go with Ollie Gordon. Like this is the format you take him if you're going to take him. He's got to come off the board. You mentioned Brian Robinson, like that's a spitting clone of Brian Robinson. Like that's the type of running back where you go, if I'm just going to flex the shit out of these types, like this is where I want to just collect these profiles where if he gets opportunity, he's got to earn it and he's still going to be landing spot dependent. But like if there's ever a game where like I view him as like if you can just collect like the Zach Charbonnet types here, even like you just take them and you just want to have enough of them to get by in a season. So I think he's a pretty clear running back for me. I can't argue with the Martinez pick though. He kind of fits the same build.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch 209.
Travis Hunter. Like,
yeah.
So if anyone listened to what teams were saying before the combine, they were all saying, hey, we have him on the board as a wide receiver. We have him on the board as a wide receiver. Multiple teams said that. I know he's coming out saying, I want to keep playing both ways. I'm just really happy he didn't come into the combine, be like, you know what? I'm a defensive back. So just having him on the board at the 209, like to me, it's an absolute smash right here.
Yeah, we talked a ton about Travis Hunter on Friday on the morning drive. Just talked about the polarization of there was that, and then later on in the day, like the polarization of he's either going to go way higher than people want to pick him, or he's going to fall entirely, and it's based on information that we probably don't know for sure and may not know before we get to your rookie draft. But I think if there's an inkling, there's enough steam that he's the best receiver in the draft, or my draft grades have him higher than everybody in the class, as long as I know he's going to play receiver. Like if we get that kind of information, he's going way higher than this, just because I do think people will buy into the fact that he could be the wide receiver one. Shane, you got sniped on Travis Hunter. You were hoping to get the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2 with Tet McMillan and Travis Hunter, but you got sniped. So what are you doing?
Again, I keep belaboring this. I want the next like 6 picks. I'm gonna play this with some pretend context. I'm just gonna make this context up. It's completely made up, right? But the dude at 210, trade it for this pick, or chick, woman, lady, ma'am, whatever, person. Trade it for this pick, 210. They've got 1 pick. This is the only pick they got, right? So they have to make it count, and they're gonna make it someone that they like. They are going to, as soon as I start to make the pick, I talk myself out of it. But no,
Shane trades up and doesn't know who to take.
I'm going Jalen Noel. No, I'm just taking
Jalen Noel. Okay.
Look, I loved his combine. I liked him in the Senior Bowl. I've talked about it before. Dude's an explosive play machine. He had a great combine, like elite level combine. There's probably 7 players I'd be comfortable taking right here, to be quite honest with you. And this is just going to be like I said, in this context, I traded up for this pick, or this is the only pick I had for whatever reason. I moved everything else, and I've got 1 player that I can't let get by me. I have to get him, and I'm getting him here.
Didn't think you'd go there, but you had some conviction. Somebody traded in. This is their only player, Jalen Noel, so they have to have some conviction on trading in and taking that 1 player. Brandon, you're up at 211.
I'm going to go a bit risky here. I'm fine with the comments. This is still start 2 QB.
Here we go.
And I knew you guys were going to, I'm taking Jalen Milroe here. Okay. I'm going with Milroe. And here's why. A, it's the point per carry format. So I get the boost of him knowing he's going to run. I mean, Alabama, that's like half of the plays is what he did. The other thing is that I read through some of the tea leaves. Now, again, not sure if it's true, if it's just smokescreen season, right? The NFL is viewing him kind of like they know he's a project, right? They know he's going to be, he might be QB3, QB4 off the board. He's probably going to be, he's not a day 1 quarterback. We can put that one to bed, but he's going to probably be in day 2. And whether it's late day 2, early day 3, like round 3, like someone's going to take a shot on him. And especially if it's a team that has, it has a bridge quarterback, or is trying, like, what if it's the Cleveland Browns? What if the Cleveland Browns come out, they don't take quarterback at pick 2, and they wait and they take Milroe in round 3, right? And he walks right into opportunity in a start 2 QB format. Like, yeah, I'm taking the swing at the 211, because if I miss, it's the 211. Nobody really cares. Nobody's really going to fault you for it. But if it's the 211 can turn into potentially a 26 or 27 first, I just made a ton of value. Like, yeah, I could probably take the RB8 or RB9 or the wide receiver 7. I'm going to take the upside here of Milrow.
Yeah, I think we all kind of had a facial reaction when you said it's a 2 QB. We all kind of knew it was what we were going to do. I think for me with Milrow, what I'm looking for is you can see a world where he gets drafted to a spot, and it's probably going to have to be round 2, early round 3. Like anything lower than it's probably a wasted spot because there's not really a guarantee with the team that they're really ever viewing him as a starter. But if he goes into the second, and hear me out on this, if he goes to a team like the Jets, you can forecast that he's going to start at some point, right? But I actually don't want him to really start early on. I actually want him to sit there, develop, let them talk themselves into how he's developing, right? And then maybe they deploy him at the end of the year, and it's a stable regime with a coach that's not going to get fired. That's the team that could go into next year going, Jalen Milrow, we're going to give him a year. That's when you get the value on him. You don't get the value the day before he starts, because I think people in Dynasty are smart enough to go, well, you took him at the 211. I'll give you a future second. I'm not giving you a first until I see him have 2 good games, 3 good games. Okay, that's when we're cooking if he has 3 good games. But he may not even play 3 games. He may not even play 3 games before your trade deadline to where you can actually move him for anything. Where you really profit on that pick, Brandon, is if you draft him. Remember, Jalen Hurts started 4 games as a rookie, right? Then the next year, they kind of handed him the job, like as a trial basis, but that's where you get the value, where people will go, oh, Milrow is going to start in 2026. Now you have somebody that might give you a 2028 first for him. You know what I mean? Yep. That's where you capitalize. So I think that's a pick where if you're wrong, you can live with that over the RB9. You know what I mean? You can live with it. So, all right, I'm going to end this. I don't really want to take a receiver, but I think there's only 2 more that I'd probably draft. So I know Mitch will probably take one. If I don't, I'm going to go Jaden Higgins. I think the NFL is really going to like the fact that he is big and he tested the way that he did. I mean, Chase Claypool went in the 2nd round. I think there's enough starvation at receiver where if we have 5 if we count Hunter going in the 1st, I think he's going to go in the 2nd. So it's just going to come down to exactly what Mitch took Iamaner with. It's the same exact bet. He's got to go a place where you're comfortable that he's going to get targets. He's not behind, another guy that looks just like him. But I think him and Iamaner are very similar bets. So that closes out round 2. Mitch, you're up at 301.
Oh, that sucks. That's who I was going to take.
Not your boy Trey Harris.
Trey Harris is there, but in this kind of league,
I know.
That's my thing. Like if you're normal PPR league, Trey Harris is my pick right here. I don't hesitate, and I'm really happy with it. But in a point per carry league against I'm going to go Dylan Sampson. I know he didn't run. He had the hamstring issue. Maybe that was the sole reason. I really don't like it when guys don't run the 40, but they're willing to do other stuff. But he was a guy who I had locked in as my running back 5 throughout the process. And then I've jumped some other guys over him just because I like them more, but he hasn't done anything himself to drop. So I'm willing to take him here at the 301, but yeah, my other pick would definitely be Trey Harris.
Yeah, I think that Sampson has just kind of got lost in the sauce with the other running backs that have actually been in the spotlight, and he just hasn't all year. Not in the Senior Bowl, not at the Combine. So it's a fine pick if you have some conviction on him. Shane, 302.
I keep hoping you guys will make this easy on me and just take players that I feel obligated to take that I shouldn't take, but I probably am going to take. All right, so there's one player I'm going to take. I'll take him later because I know no one else is going to. I'm playing this like I'll have him at the 402. He might be there, and if not, I'll try to trade up with one of you two. And I've made trade in mock drafts before, so it's no big deal. I don't know if we could let him fall any further. We're going with Mr. Scadaboo. He also did not run, but he did well on the vert and the long jump, right? I think it was the long jump, but he did things that show that he has a lot of burst. So I'm going to go get Mr. Bursty. He might be top heavy. He's kind of weirdly built, but I think this is a pick that here it gives me a couple outs. I think he's a player that people are going to really like. They still like. And I guarantee in our comments, there's going to be people telling us they can't believe that he fell this far. Whatever. You could say that about a bunch of players. But yeah, I like Cam enough that I'll take him here.
Brandon, what's your pulse real quick on Cam Scattaboo's current ADV?
People still love him. People love him. And I think at the end of the day, people love him. I think, like Shane just said, people are going to say, how can you take Scattaboo over Ollie Gordon? How can you take Ollie Gordon over Scattaboo? How can you take, Damian Martinez over Scattaboo? We're just reacting to what we saw at the combine. And what we saw at the combine was really good 40s I think I saw a tweet. There was like 17 guys that had like speed, like really high speed scores, like
15 speed scores over 100 record.
Yeah, like you can't discredit those guys. Like I'm sure when Cam goes and runs a 4.58 40 at the Arizona State Pro Day, everybody's gonna be like, see, he should be right here, and we'll adjust. But we are going off of the information we just literally watched on the NFL Network.
Yeah, there's something about Scattaboo. People just are there's a cult following of people that are just going to be rooting for him to smash. And when he does, they can say, I told you so, because he was such a polarizing player. So what are you doing at 203 or 303?
I'm going tight end. I'm between two. I'm between two.
Talk about it.
So there's a tight end that a lot of people probably think I'm going to go, right? But I'm not going with the Bowling Green tight end. I'm not going Fannin. I'm actually going with an Oregon tight end. I'm going to go with Terrence Ferguson. He had arguably one of the, if Mason Taylor had like the best, performance at the combine, like Ferguson was right up there with him, right? 4.6, 4, like had 4.6, 440, had perfect, like he just showed off, right? He showed off at the Senior Bowl. He showed off again at the combine. He's probably going to show off again with Dylan Gabriel at the Pro Day. And he's worked his way into probably relevant draft capital at this point. Like he's went from a guy that you're like, this would be nice to have on a day 3. Like he'll be down there, but he's kind of worked his way into probably early day 3. I'm not going to say he's day 2 yet because there's just so many guys. Like we could keep stuffing. Oh yeah. 125 guys are going to be day 2 draft capital and there's only 98 picks, right? Like he's probably an early day 3 guy. And if he lands in a really good spot, I think that he could probably leapfrog some of these picks. So I'm going to take Terrence Ferguson here.
Shit. So I'm going to admit something. And I know no other analyst ever makes a mistake. I'm one of the few that actually does. I legitimately forgot that he was sitting out there and probably would have taken him most definitely over Cam Scattaboo. And if not earlier, depending on my picks. Because, yeah, that dude had he's an athletic freak. And we like athletic freaks at the tight end position. So I'm going to take the L on that. Good job, Brandon. Good
And
job.
Shane has no shame. He would offer you Scattaboo and another pick to get Terrence Ferguson right now. The guy, I messed it up. I will add to the higher pick to get the guy that I missed in the pool.
He's got the 304 and he's giving me his 26 second to come up. To
whoa. We're not going that far now. We're not going that far. I will give you an extra third as a mea culpa. But yeah, nice pick.
Well, 304, I'm going to take Harold Fannin because I think in this format, the one thing he does is what will attract a lot of people if he does it and he does it quickly and he does it in a way people like. It's kind of like the Milroe pick. If he's just viewed as a guy that can earn targets early and people see him as he's a tight end that's going to have a role. I mean, we can debate day and night what a landing spot would be good or bad for him. We talked about that a little bit on the stream. But I think if Fannin is good, people are going to look back and go, how the hell did you not draft 100+ catch receiver that's the most productive college tight end we've seen come in that is still going to end up with a RAS a little bit over 8, which doesn't bury him. He didn't test in a way where he's just buried. I just think he's polarizing, but I think it's a big swing and it's a big hit, just like Milroe. If you're right, you could end up with a fantasy-wise, a top 2 or 3 tight end in the class, more productive than Mason Taylor, more productive than Elijah Arroyo, given the 2 PPR, because I don't care about any of that tight end stuff so much. So I think this is a good spot to take the shot. Mitch, you're up 305.
So if I'm going pure value, smashing Trey Harris here. But if I look at the team that's actually had the 105 so far, it means you will walk out of this draft probably without one of the running backs, which probably isn't the greatest thing. But at the same time, getting Trey Harris at the 305 in any draft, I'm going to be extremely happy to do that. So I'm going Trey Harris here, even though it means I'm not getting a running back. Maybe at 405, I'll just grab whoever the best one is. I still think at this point in the draft, I have to go with who I think the best player is.
Doesn't it look like with just drafting for this team specifically that you got Manor and Harris, and you're hoping one of those guys is startable in a start 10, right? Like you're kind of hedging your bets a little bit there.
That's the hope, and neither of them might be. Like I might only walk away from this draft with Tyler Warren be my only startable piece in this league, which isn't great if you look at the team as a whole.
And I bet Shane is probably going with a running back here. Is that right, Shane?
It's highly possible. I don't want to put it out there because maybe somebody wants to trade up, but it's highly probable that I am going with.
He knows the position, but not the player.
We picked all the players.
I'm just picking. I'm just gonna go and do it. I'm gonna take RJ Harvey. I wanted to go Devin Neal. But quite frankly, again, every step of the way, Devin Neal has given me less reasons to like him. So RJ Harvey has gone the other way. So, there's actually another running back that I should have picked right here that I love even more after everything that he's done. And guess what? Guys? I'm controlling the board. I fat fingered that. I'm taking the pick back. What do you think about that?
I know
because you're going to take the guy that I probably am going to take.
I'm taking Tootin.
Yep.
Taking Tootin. Are you kidding me? I don't even know how that slipped my mind. As I'm talking about like a player that has done something, right? So I'll just behind baseball, inside baseball, how you make the sausage stuff, right? We got to the Senior Bowl, and I don't want to say a couple of us were making fun of Scott about how he liked Tootin, but there were at least one of us that was like, Tootin. And then literally every step of the way since then, it's been, this guy. Like his combine was just absolutely bonkers, legitimately bonkers. Like that's what it says on his RAS score, I think, is bonkers. So I'm going to go Tootin here. I know the league is not going to be happy that I'm the commish and went ahead and deleted a pick and took another player, but suck it up. That's life. I'm going with Tootin.
Yeah, Shane put in Harvey. We all looked at him like, oh, okay. And then he wiped the board. But Brandon, Tootin is what everybody thought Harvey was going to be, right? They literally switch spots right now in terms of, I would definitely take Tootin over Harvey, but you're up. And to Mitch's point, you could look back in a year and go in a point per carry, Manor and Harris, and you're like, damn, I could have had Giddens and Tootin. You know what I mean? You're like in a point per carry. That's where the format can get you. But you're up 307, Brandon.
Yeah, I was going to take Tootin.
You haven't quit the league because Shane has manipulated the draft board as the commissioner.
I have not rage quit and left the league. I'm going to go with Rocket Sanders here.
Okay.
He had a really good combine. I know a lot of people kind of, he had a really good start to his collegiate career in Arkansas, and he was, kind of, I remember seeing him as high as RB2 for some folks, and then he had a, not so great season last year, and then he transferred and didn't have, again, was kind of like, all right, but then he had a really good combine, and he had one of the highest miles per hour in his 40, dude was scooting at his size, and again, kind of playing to the format here of point per carry. Like he's probably going to be a day 3 guy. We're at this point, we're just kind of all kind of in these are day 3 guys. So we're just looking at who are the big dudes who can tote the rock 12 to 13 times. And somebody like Rocket Sanders, I think, still has a little bit of that name cachet. Like if he was to come back on the radar, people would definitely be back in on him. So at 307, I'm going to take the shot on Rocket Sanders.
Yeah, this definitely feels like you're just trying to tell a story for these running backs. They're all going to get capital that's pretty equivalent. And so it's going to be very much dependent on who you like, what their backfield looks like, what their draft capital is. I mean, this is a great spot where I got Ollie Gordon at 208. This is a great spot to take Devin Neal at 308. People are kind of pushing him down because of the combine, but this is a guy legitimately people had as RB6 for a while, even post Senior Bowl, was like, I still have Devin Neal pretty high. Maybe he fell a little bit, but I don't think he should fall to, what are we at right now? We are at RB 13, I believe.
RB far. Yeah,
I'm fine taking him there because I think we could look back and go, these guys should have been in totally different order from Giddens to Devin Neal. We could literally flip all of those depending on, what spot they go to. Oh, Mitch, you're up 309.
See, this one's a little bit different. So this team has Travion Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Hunter could have absolutely smashed this draft so far. So I'm willing to go out on one of my guy picks. I'm picking Jalen Royals. Jalen Royals is a guy who I picked in pretty much every mock draft so far. Utah State prospect, ran fine, ran a 4.42 or 4.43, something like that. Absolutely great. To me, he's Steve Smith. Like how Steve Smith played is exactly how Jalen Royal plays. So for me, that's where I'm going here. Honestly, if I didn't have, I like going through the fourth round, I'm definitely going to be looking at the team that I've drafted so far. I'm going to try to draft by that team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Understand
it does.
completely.
Shane, 310. You've taken 2 receivers.
We have completely said we don't care about this format. We love wide receivers. It is 2022, and that's how you build for the wide receiver position, and that's what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and make this pick that everyone's going to hate, and mostly because everyone's going to hate it. But, dude, this dude smashed at the combine, and every NFL podcast I listen to tells you how good this dude is. I call him a dude because you can't call him a kid. He's the same age as me. He had some things in college that went bad, right? He got injured a lot. He was actually Justin Herbert's backup, in case you haven't heard. He's actually played with Bobby Herbert, too. Bobby A. Bear. I don't know if anyone knows that. But, yeah, I'm going to take Tyler Shuck. He killed the combine. Listen to what scouts say about him. Listen to what, Todd McShay says about him. Listen to what they say about him on The Athletic. This dude has got a cannon of an arm. He's athletic. I forget what his 40 was, but it was very good for a quarterback. Assuming he doesn't break another collarbone, which he's done, I think, twice. This is going to be the steal of the draft, and everyone's going to feel really bad in 2 years when this guy is a top 20 quarterback, and I got him for the 310.
All right. Interesting. After the third, I want to go through just a couple positional principles, and then we'll rip the fourth round before we get out of here. Brandon, 311, you are up.
Looking at this team, I got, some people's RB2. I got a wild card, a quarterback. I'm going to take another wild card here. I'm going to go Luke Lachey at 311. I think he's kind of out of sight, out of mind a little bit because people forgot about his, 2022 going into 2023 performance. And then he, had a major, ankle injury. Didn't really have a great 2024 performance. Some people will point to he's just another Iowa tight end, and we just got to draft him and trust it. And yeah, there's some of that in this pick, but there's also, I've seen him produce at a high level. Hopefully he's healthy, comes out, does well. And in the format, hey, if I can get potentially, tight end 13, tight end 14, points per game at the 311, I'm going to take it on a guy that I know can produce. So Luke Lachey.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think he has definitely been kind of forgotten. I do think that if you just look objectively at Luke Lachey, if he didn't go to Iowa, I don't know if he would separate himself from others, but the Iowa thing has kept him on the radar when really he hasn't done really anything else to be on the radar. But I get the pick, the format. I'm going to take another gamble. Probably not playing to the format too much in my first 2 picks with Burden and Higgins, but again, you're picking at the end of the draft. I think this is the last tight end I would draft. I'm going to go with Arondé Gadsden. I came in at 240 plus, which I think was a good thing for him. 6'5", 243. I thought he'd be smaller. I thought he'd come in at, 6'3", 235, where I'm like, okay, he's kind of built like a receiver. It's going to take him a couple years, but I think he's a lot like Fannin. If he's good, what he's good at, people in this type of format are going to like. So I think he's the last tight end I would draft. Mitch, just real quick, are there any other tight ends you're considering? Nope. That's a head shake as a no.
Nope, not at all.
Shane, Any other quarterbacks you're considering?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's there's at least 2.
Okay. Well, Mitch, you're up starting the 4th. We'll go rapid fire on these picks like we always do.
Yeah, I'm going Kyle McCord here. He's a guy who played pretty well at Syracuse this past season, and I, don't love him, but in a 2 quarterback league, I'm going to take a gamble here.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't take a quarterback with this team yet. Even if you needed one, you weren't really ever in a spot to take one. You know what I mean? You would have had to use the 201 on Jalen Milroe, which you didn't want to do. And yeah, so I get it if you're just looking for something short term to fill the gap. Shane, 402, was that one of the ones you were going to take?
No. So there's actually 3 quarterbacks that I am fine with people taking. Oh, so, I was talking about him in the last round, RJ Harvey. I actually drafted him and then undrafted him.
Dude, this is so typical Shane. He'll draft the guy and then it's mistaken and he'll never even look back at that player.
Well, no, so what I'm doing, I'm looking at this team, right? This team in
Yes.
particular, the way that they're drafting. Clearly, they have a need, right? It's running back. They're trying to backfill that position. This is probably a team that had no running backs of any value and is just like, you know what? Let me get a bunch of them and add it. And this is probably a team that goes, you know what? Shane's an idiot. I wish there was a 5th round because then I would take another running back. But yeah, we're going to go RJ Harvey here. Look, I could have taken him and did a round before this as another person in the draft. Another person drafted him and backed out. But I'm going to take him here. I think he fits this build and what this team is probably trying to do.
Yeah, I can't argue with it. You almost took him at 306, so he should probably be up the board.
Someone did, not me. Remember,
not you. But yeah, even if his capital is going to be maybe later than some others, I think that's still a similar bet when we're in the 4th round of the draft. You're playing into the format. Brandon, 403. What are you doing?
I'm going with Trevor Etienne. This team needs a running back. Got a little bit of a name, knowing his brother. Obviously, probably won't have the same draft capital, but ran a really good 40. Got some good speed. Played in the SEC. So you gotta figure, playing a little bit to the format, a little bit to the name ADV. Yeah, give me Etienne.
Yeah, I can't argue with that pick. Probably he's not huge, but of the running backs I'm looking at, there's some guys that I don't know if they're going to get capital that are big. And then there's some other guys that probably are not specific for the point per carry format that I might take over him. But I can't argue with that pick at all. I'm between 2. I'm going to go Brashard Smith. It's still a running back in this format where people are going to need running backs. I don't think he plays into the format so much, which is why he's fallen. I think that if this was just a PPR league, he would have already gone over some others. But you just got to keep going down the line. And if you think about what Keaton Mitchell was when he first came into the league, you know what I mean? I think Smith's an even better receiver. But if you could just have that, there's going to be a market in this type of format where people are starved for running backs. So Brashard Smith, 404. Mitch, you were up at 405.
Yeah, we'll go Woody Marks here. So this is the team we're talking about earlier too, where they haven't drafted a running back yet, right? And they have Trey Harris, Alec Manor, and who knows. So you got to take a shot at some point on a running back in this draft class. Woody Marks is, some guys liked him, 2 months ago. He's definitely fallen out of favor in the last month or so, I'd say. Didn't have a great combine. But, I mean, these are just the shots I'm willing to take in the 4th round.
Yeah, I'm just going down the line at RB. Shane, 406.
So this team has gone, and Brashad doesn't have a picture because he is not in our database.
The disrespect.
Yeah,
Smith.
I kept trying to type it and it wouldn't come up. So then finally I gave up. So we went Colston Loveland, great pick. DJ Giddens, very good pick. Tootin, very good pick. You know what? It is late in the draft. This is a 2 QB league. This is distasteful. Apparently he had a good combine, and we keep seeing him mocked in the 2nd round to some team. So we're going to go with Captain Quinn Ewers. Yep.
I think you could argue people may take him in the 3rd if he gets 3rd round capital. Like it's Spencer Rattler from last year. He's got a name. You know what I mean? If he's in a good spot where you could get opportunity, I think it's a great pick. Brandon, 407.
I'm going to go Ty Felton, wide receiver out of Maryland. He had a 4.38 40. He had a very good season at Maryland. He's probably going to get round 3, round 4 draft capital. I know these are not necessarily the kind of guys we love to hit on, but in the 4th round, you just kind of start taking some of these. Looking at this team, they already got 2 hammer running backs, and Damian Martinez and Rocket Sanders got the Shadur Sanders. So there's already a little bit of risk in this, fringy playoff team. Why don't we try to take a little bit of upside here and go try to get maybe we can get a flex wide receiver here with Ty Felton.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what is the plan when you draft a receiver in this type of format here? Like,
You're
is it
hoping,
are you just walk me through what the process is with the pick? What are you hoping for? Like, if he has a role, would you sell him for a 4th next year? Like, what's kind of the move?
Okay, can I sell him if he comes out in training camp? I don't even think I even want him on my roster going into the season, right? If he has a good rookie camp where he impresses and he's possibly, the wide receiver 3 on a really good offense, let's just say maybe he's the, round 3 to the Rams. I'm just throwing out an example here. Round 3 to the Rams, and he's showing promise and he's showing hope. Can I flip him into DeAndre Hopkins or, an older 30-plus-year-old wide receiver that I know I can plug and place in my flex spot? Because what's the point of flipping a 25 4th for a 26 4th? We're just kicking the can. I want the production. I'm 407. I'm trying to get into the playoffs and stay there.
Yeah, this is even between now and the NFL draft. I think if you could move last year's versions of like Ty Felton, like the Roman Wilsons of the world, if you can move that for even a backup running back, you're confident is a backup running back that nobody likes. If I can get Devin Singletary, who's a backup for a guy like Ty Felton in this format, I'd rather just collect those guys on my bench than go into the season with a bunch of day 3 receivers. You know what I mean? Even if they are guys that popped in training camp, I'd rather have the backup running backs. I'm just going to take another running back. I'm going to go Jaden Blue. I think I've debated between him and Brashard Smith. I think they're very similar. Smith had more fanfare because he was at the Senior Bowl. I think Jaden Blue's probably a better running back than the class is giving him credit for, but people just never had him on the radar because they didn't think he would be in this class. So he's just been forgotten, but I think it's worth taking the talent of Jaden Blue here at 408. Last picks. Then we'll get to the worst pick from another team, but Mitch, this is your last one. Make it count.
Savion Williams. I love him at the end of this draft. He's TCU. He's like 6'4", runs a 4.45, 4.48, something like that. But he plays everything. So that's the thing. In a point per carry league, there's probably a good chance he's going to get you a couple carries during some games. And maybe they just decide that he's their running back in whatever Cordero Patterson thing they want to do. So this late in the draft, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Somebody always has to take the receiver that could be the next Deebo Samuel in the point per carry league. That's a staple pick that absolutely will happen. Shane, last pick. What you doing? He's mesmerized.
I'm just, look, it's final pick, right? It's 4-10. I went 2 wide receivers, went quarterback. Is there anyone I even particularly hold an affinity towards out of anyone that's remaining?
What about your boy Marcus Yarns?
I needed him to run a faster 40. Boo. Yeah, I'm going to go with a player that I bet you gets me some starts. I bet you he gets me some starts at some point during his career. Dylan Gabriel. Still like him. He's still tiny, super small. Unfortunately, he did not take the Jalen Milroe hand growth pills, and he did not get taller or bigger at the combine, but I still like Dylan Gabriel, and I think he's a type of player, if you get him in there, he could give you 1 or 2 good starts. If he doesn't have to start 4 games in a row, I think he'd be fine, and you'd be okay throwing him out there.
And Brandon, Shane is the team that I know he's picking for multiple spots, but Shane is the team that has the Matt Stafford, Derek Carr QB room, and he is traded in and he's just ripped Tyler Shuck, Kyle McCord, Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel. He's taking them all, hoping he gets one.
You just got to keep throwing darts at the dartboard, right?
It's a viable strategy. You paid nothing higher than the 310 for all of them. So, it's a viable strategy. Brandon, this is your last pick. Make it count.
Well, unfortunately, this team may or may not need this pick, but I'm gonna go with Isaiah Bond here. I know it's not, again, it doesn't really kind of go to the format, but it goes more to he's fast and people somewhat kind of like, he's not 419 fast. The dude lied. All right. The court got him. All right. But he's probably going to get round 2, round 3 draft capital. Like, again, I'm just taking these shots kind of like I took the shot with Ty Felton. Like, I don't necessarily want him, but he's known and people know about him for good or bad. And if he could have one of those training camp highlight reels where, Joe Burrow is throwing him a deep ball and he's high pointing it for a 65-yard pass in air and people go wild. And I could probably move him for Hollywood Brown, and now all of a sudden I've got somebody who I kind of actually trust a little bit more in that last flex spot.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it wild that a player that the only thing he really did was run a 4.39 the whole offseason and people are like, he sucks. Like, if he just wouldn't have said he's going to break the record, the only data point we really have on Isaiah Bond is like he came out and ran a 4.39. You know what I mean? There's other receivers that like, oh man, that guy was fast. I'm going to put him on my radar now. And we buried the dude and put him at the 4.11, even though he's probably going to get higher draft capital than half the guys we've taken since the second round. He's still going to go in day 2. So I don't hate it. I'm going to go Jarquiz Hunter with my last pick. He's 215, multi-year starter in the SEC, was good as a young guy in the SEC. And again, another guy that didn't come out in the class that people thought, so he must be dead. But this is the type of format where he's a round 6 pick and you just hope he makes a depth chart and he has a chance to get you a couple starts across, a couple years where he's on your roster. So guys, we're done. We're all going to pick one pick that we did not select that we think somebody else completely flubbed. So you guys got your picks in mind? Mitch, Shane, Brandon, we don't have to go in order. We can go with, you have one in mind where you're like, oh, hell yeah, that was an awful pick. That's the one I'm picking. You cannot pick your own, Shane. So that probably eliminated a lot of yours.
I love all my picks. I absolutely hate Jalen Milroe in the second. I think he's going to be absolutely terrible.
Terrible.
Like, that's a terrible and dreadful put together. He's going to be terrible. Honestly, I don't hate a lot of the picks. So that's the one I'm going to go with, to be honest, in the first 2 rounds. Probably if I can't pick one of my own. I don't know. Did Alec Alamaner do anything to make you feel like he deserved to be drafted ahead of Damian Martinez or Giddens or Travis Hunter or Noel for that matter? So just those 2.
You can only pick one. You can't hate on everybody's.
He's just shooting holes in everybody right now.
Just the 2. So Alamaner and Milroe, but Milroe makes more sense because of the format. So I'll withdraw my Milroe objections and just go with Alamaner.
All right. Well, again, I will go on Milroe because to me, he's DTR to me. We've seen that prospect in the NFL, and DTR wasn't getting any draft. No one was trading for him. Oh, hey, he's starting. There was no first round picks being thrown at that guy, right? I just don't think he's good. Like, you have to at least be good in college. Like, a pretty good college quarterback to be good in the NFL. I just don't think he was ever good in college.
Okay. You're glad. I wish Shane would have not have passed on Milroe, because then Mitch would. Who would you have picked as your backup if he kept Milroe, Mitch?
Arroyo. I thought it was kind of dumb for me to go Mason Taylor. Then we doubled down on it. So 201 to 202. I'm like, this probably isn't a great idea.
But so something funny about that, right? And Scott brought it up earlier about the running backs. Sometimes like people open a door and you're like, well, fuck it. If he's going through the window, I'm going through the window too. And then you both get inside and you're like, wait, this house is on fire. This probably wasn't the best idea.
I think all the tight ends. I mean, I took Fannin. Brandon took Lachey. I took Gadsden. I think where Arroyo and Taylor are going to get drafted, are they going to go in the second? Probably. But what you're aiming for at tight end is a very specific archetype of they either are a locked and loaded top 6 or better tight end that everybody wants, or it's a tight end that just can catch passes. So I think if you're just looking at some of the bets that were cheaper, like you can easily see one of Arroyo and Taylor and someone looking back in a year and going, how the hell did you let first round receivers go after them? You know what I mean? One of you's probably going to be really wrong where you're like, dude, I just drafted the next insert whatever tight end that we've seen gone in the second or third. And you go, what was I doing? Luke Musgrave. You know what I mean? Like I took Luke Musgrave over Xavier Worthy. I know they weren't in the same class, but the same type of, bet or result. Brandon, how about you? Worst pick?
I don't want to say it's necessarily worst pick, but I'm mad that we made that pick at that spot, and it's Travis Hunter. Right? Because if the logic that we used for 203 and 204 was, these are first round guys, why the heck did we do it for Travis Hunter? Right? We're just like, the heck with draft capital. Like, if we're gonna choose him as a wide receiver, he should probably be where Elick is, at least. Right. So like all the picks that are in that range of 205 to 208, I know I'm being like cop out here, but like if I don't want to take the negative because I don't think it was a bad pick. I think it's just where he went, the logic we utilized, it was like a blind spot. Now it could have just been like, hey, we just completely forgot about Travis Hunter, but there's going to be people like, if we're going to use that logic, he's a first round guy and he's going to be a wide receiver. We've got to take that probably a little bit more into account and probably say that he should be at least in the 205 conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we already picked Aya Manor, but I think Hunter's got, if you're willing to make the bet that he's a receiver, he's got to go before any receiver that's not going to go in the first round, in my opinion. So that would have slotted him right there at the 205. If you want to take a Booker or Golden over him because they're also going to go in the first, I'm okay with that. But if you start saying, okay, Jalen Knoll or Jaden Higgins or Aya Manor should go ahead of him, and you're like, well, I hope those guys go in the second. You know what I mean? That's where you're like, I'm willing to just make the Hunter pick. So my pick would have been Aya Manor for that reason. But I still think the Hunter bet is going to be even more expensive if you really want to make that bet. Like there's enough people out there that are even in dynasty circles that are already saying he's my wide receiver 2. He's my wide receiver 1. So it's going to come down to the same information that we're going to want to get. Those people are also going to get, but it's going to trigger them to go, holy shit, I'm taking him at 105. You know what I mean? It's not going to be, he's going to be there in the second. So you could see him ahead of Burden, Igbuka, and Golden if you get a positive piece of information on him. So, and
why didn't we take the top 5 draft pick over the round 4 running back? It just think, again, because we always talk about situation and draft capital, right? Like situation matters and, draft capital. And so that's the one where I don't think it was a bad pick. It's just, I think it was a bad spot for him to land in the draft.
I 100% agree with you. You guys dropped the ball on that because I would have picked him much sooner than that. You guys did a terrible job there.
All right, Commissioner. Can I say Bayshul Tutin's the wrong one because you put in the wrong player?
Yeah, well, I don't want to duplicate my worst pick because it would have been either the 2 tight ends or Aya Manor. I think those were all 3 very expensive bets to make in lieu of taking Travis Hunter, but we've already beat that to death. So go down a little bit further. I still think that the Milrow pick I can still get because I can see a world where I can sell Milrow for a profit because he's going to have the storyline. Every other quarterback, though, like I hate to pick on Tyler Shuck or Kyle McCord, but like it is a very specific bet to draft a quarterback that can't run in this format and expect to turn a profit. You have to know your league. If your league won't even trade a third for the Drew Lock that's going to start half the season, if they won't trade a third for that guy, where's the profit going to be on these quarterbacks that got taken later? I get you want to take those, but it's not necessarily the 2 QB format, it's in lieu of doing something else with those picks. So my cop-out's going to be all of the quarterbacks that were taken after Milroe as just, I don't want to say roster cloggers, but you have to be a very nuanced and active dynasty player to flip the QBs in that range versus what else I could have done with the pick. Could I have gotten a better quarterback for the pick with Tyler Shuck? No way. Could I have gotten more creative with what I got back, though? Would somebody have given me 3 backup running backs for one of those picks? I'd rather do that than just roster a lot of these quarterbacks, even though they are going to get draft capital and they're going to probably be backup candidates for teams. So that's it. Any players, anybody notice that did not get picked that stand out to you? Tez Johnson didn't get picked. That's a guy with high ADV that ADV might be crushed after the combine, but did he even enter your guys' mind until like the late 4th?
No, I was holding out hope for him. Then he came to the combine. That dude needed to put up like Xavier Worthy, like a 40, and not even close. And somehow he lost weight since the combine, since Senior Bowl, which is like he's an easy player to root for. It's just I'm not going to be drafting him. I'll be rooting for him on someone else's team, unfortunately.
It's lineup. That's the bigger. If it was best ball, sure, he's probably in the 4th round. But the fact that it's lineup and you have to put him in the line, you actually have to make the decision to put him in there. That's a lot harder to do over, many of the other guys that are already on the board.
Any running backs that didn't get picked stand out? Guys that have just not been on the radar. I mean, Taj Brooks is huge. It's a perfect pick for this format. Nobody really likes him. I haven't heard anybody step out in line and say he's a guy I really like. Khalil Mullins is perfect for this format too. Like if those guys just are on a team, they're guys I'm waiting to blow some fab on. To pick up LaQuint Allen is another one that's just kind of been just a guy just there that no one's really talked about. Phil Maffa, another one, huge running back that plays into the. I mean, there's 8 running backs. I would still be like, I cannot wait to pick these guys in round 5 or pick them up off waivers. But other than that, I don't know. Anybody else come to mind at all before we end? Mitch, for you?
Like Jordan James. I still like him.
Yep.
I know he wasn't great, but he's in this range. It's fine, but he's probably a fab guy, like what you said.
Yeah, Donovan Edwards, another one. Kyle
Donovan
Monundai, another one.
Now that you mentioned him,
he's going to be good. Yeah.
And Donovan, I got to look up his combine. It actually wasn't that.
He had a 4.4 or a 4.45, I think 4.46. We were a guy that we were on in the Destination Devy Discord for prop slips. I mean, he had a good 40. I mean, he has a good story. He's just had some lack of production the last 2 years, but
but he's a guy. He's a guy
like Rocket. He's a guy like Rocket, Shane, right?
Yeah,
he's a dude that people loved, then they kind of fell off, and now it's like, oh, look, he's back.
You easily could have slid him somewhere in the 4th round. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Good call there. Good call.
Yep. Well, good stuff. This was fun. Our first post combine mock. Kind of an extreme format. If you play in point per carry, if you play in 2 PPR for tight ends, if you play in 2 QB, like a lot of what we talked about, forget about some of the players, just talking through the positional value debates and things that you have to think about if you play in one of these extreme formats. But give us a like, subscribe to the channel. More content will be coming between now and free agency. We do plan on having a lot of content right when free agency comes out as well. So look forward to that. Support all the creators on the channel. And we're done for this mock. Thank you all. See you next time.